want to be respectful of folks' time. This is our second community information evening on our middle school project. Last night we were at Memorial. Last night's presentation was recorded by SPCTV. It's already on the city website and it's already on the school's website. And so, you know, if you see things here tonight and you think a friend might be interested, tell them. And they can go on to that website and watch it. And they can also email either myself, Ken Kunin, Superintendent, or Kathy Germani, Assistant Superintendent, with questions about the project, and we will get back to everyone who emails us. I say that now thinking that there won't be hundreds of people who email us, and I think there probably won't, but we actually will. Whenever I send the news notes out, you know, I usually do not put the do not reply address. I leave my own address in case people do want to you know, check in and ask questions or ask for clarification, and very few people do, but we answer them, you know, each and every time. We hope over the course of this evening you hear a little bit about the story about where we've been over the last, it's many years, but particularly since about 2015 when the board got the Middle School Facilities Task Force started, and then where we've come to now. About a year ago at this point we were in these kinds of sessions talking about where a new middle school should be, and we had information sessions and then a straw poll, and the community had a sense that the Westcott Road site was a good place for a grade 5 through 8 middle school, and then we brought that to the state board and they approved that selection, and so we began the concept design. So since last July, when the State Board of Education approved our site for a school, we've been working closely with our building committee, with lots of parents, community members, teachers, and architects, and really trying to develop the best concept we possibly could. You'll learn a lot about that this evening. So we'll really review that concept. You'll get a chance to get inside the school a bit, not as much as you might in a few more months if we can do some of the simulation work of walking around in a new school. We're not quite there yet, but it really gives you an idea of how it will lay out and what it will look like. And at the end of the process, when we go to the concept straw poll next Thursday at the high school, there'll be another presentation very similar to this, and we'll be asking the community, are you in favor of the new middle school, of this concept for the new middle school in South Portland? This then goes to the State Department of Education and gets referred on to the State Board of Education, and if they approve the concept with the straw poll being a part of that, then it goes to the voters in South Portland as a regular referendum. So there are other points, and you'll get a little bit more of a picture of that. So that's sort of a general overview of the presentation, and now we're going to dive in and hear more from Kathy Germani, Assistant Superintendent, about the history, and then getting right into the concept with Mike Johanning, architect from WBRC.
Good evening. So we have had a lot of people who have been involved in this process with us because we thought it was really important to reach out and touch a lot of people as we put this together. And we're calling this an opportunity for our future. Over the course of the time that we've been working, we have met with the principals of the building, staff in the building, the school resource officers, custodial staff. We've met quite a bit with the city planning department and code enforcement, police and fire. And in addition, we've had students and community members and parents come in. We actually have a very diverse building committee. It's made up of people who don't have kids in the schools. It's made up of parents, and we have some committee members here tonight, some school staff. It's made up of some central office staff and school board members and our architects. So over the course of the time, we've been meeting, we've had about 43 building committee meetings, I think if I tallied them all, 3 community forums, and a number of informational sessions to get to the point that we are right now. So this journey actually started back in 2006 when the board put together a secondary schools facilities committee. And at that time, we looked at the high school and both middle schools. And there was quite a bit of discussion about where to go forward. The state was in the process of talking about opening up their school funding rounds. And we were looking at the 3 schools to see which school we thought might be able to make it onto the state funding list. We decided at the time that South Portland High School, even though it had some issues, probably wouldn't. But we might have a chance with the middle schools. So at that time, we created applications for both of the middle schools. Well, the state had some issues with the funding list, and it was a long time before they actually ruled on where things went. So the school board said in 2015, we haven't heard from the state yet, even though we've submitted applications some time ago. We want you to put together a committee again, and we want you to start looking at this. So in 2015, we started a new middle school building committee. In 2016, about a year after we had been meeting, we got word that our number had finally come up on the state funding list. We were number 14, and so it gave us an opportunity to start working with the state around moving forward. So we are having a straw poll on this concept design, as the superintendent said, next Thursday evening. We have done a lot of work with the Department of Education, and you'll hear more about that. They have some guidelines that we had to follow. We've taken all of the information and input that we've gathered from everybody else, and we've put together a concept design that we will share with you tonight. So we still have a lot of work to do moving forward. And so our next meeting actually will be August the 1st. We meet 2 Thursdays a month at South Portland High School in room 221. We invite public to come. We have a section at the end where public can provide some input or ask questions. It's a pretty easy group to work with, I think, and so we welcome people coming in and sitting and listening to our meetings and asking questions. So I'll turn it over to Mike Johanning, our architect.
Great. Well, thanks for having me here tonight. It's great to have an opportunity to talk to everyone here about the project. It's a really exciting project for South Portland, and just to see this project develop is always an interesting process. So this is the state's 21-step graphic. I don't expect to be able to read this. I do have a board of this up in the back of the room if anyone wants to take a look at this in further detail. Really what I wanted to show here is there's 3 opportunities for everyone, for the community to come in and vote on this project. So we had the first opportunity with the site straw poll, which happened last year. The second opportunity will be next week, as Ken and Kathy have been saying, with the concept straw poll. And the third opportunity for the community to vote will be the November referendum when we get to that point. So kind of zooming in on a section of this chart, just so you can see a little bit more detail. Step 10 is really pretty much complete. We're working on finalizing with the DOT, one item left in that report, but that's pretty much complete. And in step 11, the Department of Education and the conferences we've been having with them, they've accepted that information and have also accepted the pieces that impact the project budget, which they're most concerned about. So step 11, the conferences with the Department of Education, those have been happening for a while now. Those are complete. They've approved us to go ahead and go out to our concept straw poll, which is step 12. As you see right there, we have that again scheduled for next week. With the results of that concept straw poll, we'll then be going to the State Board of Education. There'll be 2 meetings with the State Board of Education. The first one will be with their construction subcommittee. That meeting we're hoping to get on their schedule for beginning of July. And then it would be a middle of July meeting with the full State Board of Education for the final approval on the project. Those are 2 critical approval meetings, and once you have that approval, then we'd be all set to go forward to the referendum in November.
So as Mike said, we've been working closely with the Department of Education, and they have some clear requirements. And one of those requirements when you get on the project list is you have to do an analysis of your district. And they didn't want to see just an analysis of the middle schools. They actually wanted us to look across the district and see what our needs were. And so we did just that. We looked at K-8, mainly because the high school had just opened a brand new building. And we analyzed all of the information that we had about all of that real estate, as you might call it. And we found that we still have some significant needs at the elementary school. The city had supported redoing the 5 elementary schools. But since that time, we've seen some things happen. We've had an increase in special ed needs for students, which often translates into additional space. We've had a number of ELL students move into the district. And we also have been using spaces that technically weren't really designed to use as spaces. So as part of that analysis, we looked at that and we looked at both middle schools to see what the facilities look like. And in November of 2017, the committee together decided that in order to provide equitable services to all of our students, we thought it was in the best interest to move forward with a 5-8 middle school for a number of reasons. For equity across middle schools, right now there are some disparities between the 2 middle schools, and to also be able to give us some additional space in our elementary schools. We've started to expand pre-K. We continue to have a waiting list for pre-K, but we have no space. We have spaces like makerspace, but only in one building. And sometimes we have to wrestle with, will we give up the space because we have too many kids come in enrollment every year? Because our enrollment basically, unlike some places in Maine, has been pretty consistent. The 5-8 configuration would free up some space at elementary school and also enable us to have some really rich programming at the middle school. If I look at Mahoney right now and you look at 8th grade, there are 4 teachers. There's 1 ELA, there's 1 math, there's 1 social studies, there's 1 science. If by luck of the draw, I don't get along with the science teacher or their teaching style isn't a great fit for me, there's not a lot of choice because there's only 1. And that person, that science teacher, doesn't have the benefit of being able to work with colleagues to improve practice. She's a wonderful teacher, don't get me wrong. But her ability to be able to network with her other 8th grade colleagues around science is limited because we're in 2 different places. So we think that it's to everybody's advantage, especially the kids in the community, to have 1 5-8 middle school.
So, working on all this background information, we've been developing a number of concepts. We've well over 40 concept design iterations to date that we've been kind of working our way through. And that's been all with involvement from different stakeholders that Ken and Kathy have been referencing, bringing all that information together to get to this point where we are tonight with a concept that we want to review with everyone. And I'll walk through the plans and site plans for this building concept. So what you're seeing up on front is the front building elevation. And when we're talking with the building committee, we were looking at different iterations and we're kind of throwing out some of the more modern ideas we had. But the idea was to come up with a building style, I wanted to keep classic traditional architecture, something that was really kind of fitting with South Portland, the character of the city, and something that promotes some prominence to it. And I think we've accomplished that with the elevation that you can see up on the screen now. So what you're seeing is, so here would be the primary main entrance. You'd have a bus drop-off loop over here, a parent drop-off loop, and the fields over to the side over here. And then the whole idea we've been working with all along is this kind of 2 schools within a school. So you can get up with this smaller environment for a 5-6 wing of the building, and then a 7-8 wing of the building. So once you come in, there'd be a 5-6 wing for the building, and then a 7-8 wing for the building. The other really great thing about this site is how it slopes off as you move across the site. So Skillen is actually back over here, and the site actually really slopes off and kind of. This would be what would be the 5-6 classroom wing. This is the gymnasium of the current building in the background. That would of course be going away once the new building is built. But you can see because of the grades, and obviously if we walk around the site, it terraces off coming in this direction. So it gives us an opportunity to set the building down a little bit so it's not looking as large in relationship to the other buildings on site. Another massing view looking from the field space up towards the building. So here's, again, the current school building. We're in the library here right now. So looking up towards the building, this would be the 7-8 classroom wing. The dark blue would be the multi-purpose room, and the light blue would be where the district office would be tucking in under that space. So the key thing we've been trying to do with this is really keep the footprint really small, and we opted to go up 4 stories in one wing to, again, keep the footprint, keep it tight. So one key thing and interesting to note is once you're inside one of these classroom wings, this distance for this wing is actually shorter than the classroom wing lengths in both Memorial and Mahoney. So this kind of school in the school, school within a school atmosphere, we're trying to do that and actually keep it as small, as concise as possible. So a couple things as you kind of come in. As you come in just through the main entrance door, secure main entry vestibule. So security being a key thing, key element throughout the entire building. So if you're going to come in the building, you actually have to go in and sign in at the main office, be buzzed into the main office first before you can even get into the rest of the building. Functional life skills in the end of that wing. Nursing clinic suite. On this other wing over here, you have library learning commons, some art classrooms, health, world language, and JMG. As you come down the primary corridor here, large cafeteria and kitchen space. And then coming down, you have your gymnasium, large gymnasium, bleacher space, full locker rooms, fitness room, and then moving down these tan spaces as you further come down this wing through here. So a band room, band and chorus rooms, dedicated music classrooms, a large stage, and then a multi-purpose room. Nice thing about this multi-purpose room is this is something that's not typically state funded. We had some good conversations with the state and visiting some other school projects to get them to go along with us with this project. A portion of this space would become locally funded and supported, but this space really gives the school some really good flexibility in their PE classes, so they can have some additional PE classes, or it gives them some flexibility if there's something going on in the gym. They can still have other large program pieces happening in this space here. We're figuring it for a performance space, you could seat up to 450 in that room. Some of the other local funded pieces here that you see in red, looking at enlarging the size of the gymnasium. Again, that's giving some flexibility, so you have an opportunity to run some more PE classes at the same time. Just again, that key thing with flexibility in the space. And then some additional space here that be locally funded for the band and chorus program. In conversations again with the state, we were able to get some additional music space that you wouldn't typically get in most projects. The state was recognized how much music is an important part of the curriculum and was willing to give some additional music space to the building. So as you kind of go through the classroom wings, so the 7-8 classroom wing, again, this is the 4-story wing. So this wing actually, one of the floors actually sits down, again, as it slopes down the site. So we got some 7-8 classrooms. The yellow spaces are special ed classrooms. You have the work areas. And then here's the district office, again, sunk down lower level, and some very large storage space for the building as well. When you go up to the second floor, again, so you have 5-6 wing would be on your left, 7-8 classrooms on your right. Great thing about the this wing is that, and this layout, is you have guidance kind of at the core of the building. So the guidance area is actually dead center in the building from a floor level point of view, and also from the point of view of linking both classroom wings. And then up to the upper floor, again, keeping that 5-6 separation, and the 7-8. A big key piece we're looking at for the building is also daylighting. All the classrooms are going to have a lot of windows coming in through. We'll have also operable windows in the classroom, so if you do need to bring in some natural window, or if somebody wants to open a window, they have that opportunity to do that. Supplying daylighting at the ends of the corridors, so a lot of glass, so that as you're going through the corridors, you're not walking down the dark corridor, you bring some light into those spaces to kind of bring some life to the building. Future expansion is also something that the state's key on. We've sized the building for 900, so we think we have some room there. But also the state wants to make sure you're not building a building that's too small. So we're actually planning future expansion space in. So at the end of this wing, on the upper floor, space for 2 additional classrooms at the end of this wing. And then also future expansion down here at the end of this corridor. You can get up to potentially 3 classrooms in that area if you want to build out, again, for more classroom space at the end of the corridor. Again, continuing to play in that flexibility down the road, so they're not building yourself into boxing yourselves in down the road. Really some important sustainable features that are in the building that I think are very key to kind of go over. I mentioned the geothermal system. Geothermal system gives you an opportunity for climate control throughout the year. So the building can definitely be used in the summer and those kind of bridge months, like end of school right now where things are getting warm right now. It's kind of harder in the classroom when you're dealing in a hot classroom. beginning of the school year last year, we saw a lot where there's some very hot days and schools are having issues. With the geothermal system, we'll have some climate control, so you'll be able to handle it and control the temperature in the building, keep it cooler in the building so you can use it year round. Solar power, we're looking at putting solar panels on the roof as well as on the south side of the building wings. So what that'll do is that'll help offset any of the costs we have for additional electrical load that we have from the geothermal system. Solar orientation, we place the building on site to really capture the best solar orientation, kind of that east-west orientation, so that we control the daylight coming into the building. Building envelope, we're looking at putting in pretty high R-value thermal wall insulation, so again, take advantage of what we can for energy performance. Preservation of green space. We talked about keeping the building as tight as possible on the site and going up a floor rather than spreading out. That was something we analyzed a lot in our concept plans, was we didn't want to have a building that was just sprawling and taking over the whole site. We kept things as concise as possible and decided to go up instead. Electrical vehicle charging station. That's something we're looking at potential for a grant from Efficiency Maine. So if that grant dollars come through, we'll have that actually in the budget so we can look to get an electrical vehicle charging station on the project. And then of course all of these leading to whatever we can do to enhance the middle school education for the building. And this all ties very nicely into the Citywide Climate Action Plan. We put a link down to it on the site, but I'm going to read through this. But the main objective is the Climate Action Plan is an adaptation plan will be structured around 4 focus areas. Number 1 will be energy and high performance buildings. 2 will be transportation and land use. 3 will be waste reduction, and 4 will be climate preparedness. Centered on these sectors, the plan will provide strategies to transition each community from fossil fuels to clean and renewable energy to achieve an 80% reduction in community-wide GHG emissions by 2050. So the key piece here is the fossil fuel reduction. The building's going to be playing into that very nicely with the geothermal system. We're going to be there won't be any fuel oils in the project. We'll have some natural gas that that we're going to use for backup purposes, for the backup boilers on the really cold days, and also for the generator. But other than that, this building will be operating without fossil fuels. And some locally funded elements that we've been looking at for the project. Just kind of run through these again. So academic community space, that's in some of the areas where we're widening at corridors. They've really become great functionaries for small group space, breakout spaces, and just again, that overall flexibility in the classroom wings. The increased music space that I pointed out, increased size of the multi-purpose room, larger gymnasium, the district office, the geothermal system, again, that's a split cost with the state. That's a 50-50 split with the state. The irrigation at the fields and rainwater collection, that's kind of an interesting piece, but obviously if you have some big playing fields, getting irrigation to those fields so that it allows more usability of those fields year-round. But we're going to actually collect rainwater from the roof for that and then pipe that into through the irrigation system. Solar powered, which I mentioned, and then generator size increase. Again, that just allows you to, in emergency situations, power more of your building. The playground at Skillen, and then the Skillen parking improvements. When we do that parking improvement at Skillen, that's allow us to free up some space, some more hard surface space for the playground at Skillen. And then replacement of the school facilities, offices, the shop, and the central and receiving. Those are pieces that are being looked at, because obviously those are key pieces of this building as well. Some of those go offline. We need to find somewhere else for those. And then additional traffic mitigation as needed beyond the state involvement. And we're looking at that. We've got a slide coming up on to talk about that.
So one of the questions that the building committee wrestled with was whether central office should go in the new building or not. Currently, we're connected to Memorial Middle School and have been forever. So we talked about, do we build central office into this project, or do we look at leasing commercial space? So we have gone out and worked with a commercial broker to do an analysis of what it would cost us to actually lease office space for our central office. And we factored in some inflation costs because we know we're talking about 4 years out from now. There is Class B office space available in South Portland. It is not in proximity to any of our schools. And we think that's really important. Nowadays, we are highly involved in any issues that come up at schools where principals need our support. We're here to be able to assist with any security issues that people might have. And so we decided that these spaces that were available in South Portland were not conducive for us being able to lease space. And so we also looked at the cost. And if you look at the red line is building into this project, and the blue line actually is leasing space. And over a period of years, you'll see that the lease cost would exceed building this into the project. Unfortunately, this is a section of the building that the state will not pay for, and so we have built it into the local cost. This is the first project that South Portland's ever been awarded. All of the other projects that have been done in South Portland have been paid for with taxpayer dollars. State funding for this project right now is estimated to be about $59.6 million, and the local share, $10 million for those pieces, as Mike talked about: geothermal, additional parking, a larger gym, additional music space, and a multi-purpose space, among others. This state funding piece represents almost 86% of a brand new building. The only thing still under analysis right now is removal of the present Memorial Middle School. We have been working with an environmental firm that is doing a study, and the state is waiting for some of those additional costs in the event that there are any to build into the project. As we've talked about, we believe this should be a 5-8 consolidated middle school with 2 schools in a school, with a principal for a 5-6 and a principal for a 7-8. We believe that it should be 2 start and end times, with the 7-8 coming earlier than the 5-6. And we know, based on our transportation analysis, that we would need about 45 minutes in between both of those. And so we're currently working with our transportation department to analyze all of those pieces. We do know that it involves rerouting buses. Right now we're doing a study of how many students actually take the bus to school in the morning and the afternoon across the district, to see if maybe we can tighten up some routes or reroute some things that might lead to more efficiencies. We know that there will be an additional need for transportation, buses and drivers. We continue to work on that. We're doing an analysis right now and estimate within the next few years we'll be adding at least 2 additional drivers, and look to possibly adding 2 additional drivers beyond that to be able to help facilitate transportation back and forth to schools.
It levels off and slopes off again as you move across it. So we've been able to take advantage of that slope with how we've been constructing the building, and really keep the footprint of the building as really tight and compact as we can to preserve green space on the site. So we're going to end up with a 3-story classroom wing on this side of the building, and because of how the grades slope off, we're going to end up with a 4-story classroom wing on this side of the building. Another piece we've been looking at is using local materials. Red brick, Portland, South Portland, southern Maine area is kind of red brick area, and the reason for that is those are all local materials. You can get red brick locally very easily. That's also very good for the cost of the project. Masonry is a lot cheaper to get it using red brick. So using red brick for the majority of the elevation, breaking it up a little bit, where you have some metal wall panel to kind of break up the elevation a little bit. Looking at some use of some ground face block for the lower portion here. Again, bringing in some elements to break the elevation up, but using local materials. That's a good solid piece for the project, and also helps the budget. So looking at the site, let me just walk through everything for you. So that view you were looking at is kind of the view in this direction. Here's the main entrance to the school building. Here's one classroom wing for the 5-6. Here's the other classroom wing for 7-8. So you have the kind of classroom wing side of the building. Let's move towards the south side, gymnasium, and then you get into the music wing, music area, and multi-purpose room down on this side of the building. As you come in, here's the bus loop, circling through here, parent drop-off loop. It's a state requirement that you have 2 separate loops for that circulation. And it's a safety piece. You want to keep that traffic separated on the site, and so you don't have that cross traffic between cars and buses. So here's the tennis court areas. We're preserving that piece here. for both circulation on the site and access to the building, and also fire safety. There's a perimeter drive that goes around the building, so the fire trucks can get around the building. We've talked with the fire department about ladder access for their ladder truck, and we've been able to accommodate that. Primary entrance drive for staff coming in, we drive down the corridor here, and this would be the staff parking lot. District office would be sitting underneath this wing over in here, and they'd have their own separate entrance for district office. A couple pieces highlighted in red here, just to bring to your attention, are areas where we have some local funding. In general, the state's paying for the most of the fit up on this site, except for these areas. So looking at Skillen, since Skillen is really not part of the overall middle school project, but since this work's already happening, take advantage of the paving crews that are going to be here and fix this parking over at Skillen. So there's a parking issue right now on how the kids come out for playground recess. So get the parking out of here, move it over here, allows this playground area to really clean up a lot over at Skillen. The parking area shown right here, the parking associated with district office would be a local expense, so there's 15 parking spaces or so, but that would be part of the local expense for the district office. And then the geothermal field would be located under the two multi-purpose fields right here. That would be the well field for the geothermal system. Those well heads would actually be all well underneath the playing field surface. You won't even know they're there once the building's all fit up. But that's a 50-50 cost split, local and state. So there's a share for local expense with that aspect of the project as well. A couple other features here with the site. There's a site storage building for out storage. And again, just looking at circulation around the site pedestrian-wise. The other nice thing with sidewalks on the site, talking with some of the PE folks, is you actually make for a nice little loop pedestrian-wise, where you can actually make a nice little loop around the project site as well. So some massing views, just looking at the building. To give you we kind of left this the massing in place so you can see it in relationship to the existing school. So here's the existing classroom wing for Memorial. Here's their gymnasium. Here's the current district office. You can see the massing for the building. So again, the two classroom wings, gymnasium in the back, and then multi-purpose room through back in here. You can see how that massing works again. Again, taking advantage of the slope of the site. It's higher over this side and sloping off down towards the new field area down through this area here. Here's a view looking from the Skillen parking lot. So here's the corner of Skillen, just to give you an idea of the massing in relationship to Skillen. Again, taking advantage of these grades. So the site kind of slopes off. This allows us to sit the building down a little bit. Here's the gymnasium from the existing building that will be taken down, but you get an idea of the size of the building in relationship to Skillen. And then looking from the multi-purpose fields back up towards the building, giving you an idea of the scale of the building. So here's the current middle school wing, and here's the new classroom wing, new multi-purpose room, and the district office will be tucked in underneath the multi-purpose room. Now I say tucked in, but those spaces will all have daylight. So these lower level spaces, this lower level floor, because again how the site slopes off, you're still going to be able to get great daylighting into those lower level, that lower level here, as well as into the district office. So the building first floor plan. So primary entrance to the building right here. Again, some really key pieces we want to keep in mind is daylighting throughout. So we're driving a lot of daylight into these classrooms and controlled daylight. We want to make sure we're able to control that daylight at the same time. Some key things to keep in mind is these rooms, the size of these rooms is all coming from state formulas. The state has set guidelines for these spaces, so we're following state guidelines for those spaces. Where we deviate from that is usually where we get into local expense or where we have an expanded conversation with the state as far as, we have to support our program and why we want that additional space. So for the most part, most of the spaces are following state guidelines for scale and size of the space. So come into the main entrance, secure entry vestibule, school office. So you'd have to actually come in, get buzzed into the doors, secure, come into the office before you could enter the building after school hours, after start. Life skills suite, nurses clinic area, cafeteria and kitchen. These spaces are all sized to definitely be able to accommodate the size of the school we're looking at. Gymnasium down here in blue. This is an area where we do have some local expense. Kind of the scale of the space is kind of dotted in that red line. But what we wanted to do was to upsize the gymnasium a little bit So instead of a middle school size gym, which is a little bit smaller court size, we're going up to what they would refer to a high school size gym, so a regulation size basketball court. The really nice thing that does, though, however, is it allows the flexibility to do multiple PE classes in this room. So we'll be able to have a curtain in this space, actually have 2 curtains, so you could have multiple PE classes going on at one time. That's a huge flexibility piece. That's a benefit to the operation of the school building. So continuing around here, locker rooms, band classroom, instrument storage, stage. Here's the multi-purpose room. The multi-purpose room, we're showing seating for about 450 people in the multi-purpose room. This was an area where we had some pretty good conversations with the state as far as trying to get some additional square footage. Multi-purpose rooms don't usually come up as a supported space for the state, but we're able to point to some other projects that we've visited, other projects my office has worked on, where we've done this type of space in the past, and we're able to justify that space. We were able to get 2,500 square feet of that space on the state side of the budget, and about 1,600 square feet of that space would be on the local side of the project budget. 2 additional music classrooms for band chorus and a general music room. Those are 2 spaces that are, again, outside of the typical budget piece for the state. We were able to have some great conversations with the state after visiting schools like Westbrook, and where we could justify the size and the scale of what we're doing for the music program in South Portland to gain us 2 additional spaces. The state is going to make us pay for about 300 square feet of that one room. But overall, it's a huge plus for the programming of the building. Coming down this wing, learning commons, art classrooms, health classrooms, JMG, world language. Moving down to the lower level. So the green classrooms are all 7-8. I put just for a reference point a 7-8 or 8 or grade modification. The reality is there's flexibility in this floor plan. A lot of these rooms are similar size, so there's the ability to move these around. Really what we have on there is just opportunities to make sure we get those room counts correct, but just give you an idea of how things could break up on the plan. Each plan wing would have an ELL classroom as well as a resource room and a work room. We have these, what we're doing, widening up the corridors for community space. Those community spaces are a great opportunity for, again, flexibility in the classroom wing. Gives us teachers an opportunity for small group spaces and just general breakout and workout space, or workspace for the wing. If you want to have a community or bring a couple classrooms together, an opportunity to do that in that space. So district office down through here, this would be a locally funded space for the district office. But we're also pulled in quite a large storage area, and this will be support space, mechanical space for the district office. Going up to the second floor, the wings kind of to the second floor are very similar. Key thing on the second floor, though, is this guidance suite. The guidance suite actually becomes kind of the really dead center of the building. So you have this guidance suite that's accessible from both 5-6 wing and the 7-8 classroom wing, and a real plus and a core piece at the center of the building. And then moving up to the third floor plan, again, similar layout, we have a 5-6 classroom wing and a 7-8 wing for the piece. Another piece the state really wants you to look at is future expansion space. They don't want you to build a building and automatically be too small. So they force you to put in space so you can have build out space or capability to expand. And the idea is that we would, even though you have capability to build out footprint wise, we're going to build in expansion space so you can go up. So that'll allow us to actually put the floor slabs in place for additional classrooms in this area. So if you need them, you can build that up. Additional future expansion space could be off in this space over here. So we have a floor slab in place, and then you just need the walls and you can start to go up. Some of the great sustainable features for this building that I want to go through with folks that I think are, just to make sure everyone understands, the geothermal system that I mentioned. The great thing about a geothermal system, when you have days like today where we're sitting in this room and it's a little bit, getting on the warm side, that'll give you the opportunity for some thermal control in the building so you can bring some cooling in. So you expands the reach of your facilities so you can use them year round. Especially on the start of school days and on the end of school days where things are warmer in the classrooms, having that thermal control will make the building a lot more comfortable for everyone to use. Solar power. We're looking at solar panels on the roof and also on the elevations of the building. So the solar power will offset the energy load from the geothermal pumps. Solar orientation of the building. The 2 classroom wings we looked at are an east-west orientation. That's the best solar orientation to make sure we're able to optimize daylighting in the classrooms. Preservation of greens, building envelope we're going to do what we can to make sure we get the installation envelope as tight as possible. Again, just energy performance and saving money on energy. Preservation of green space, as I mentioned, instead of taking those classroom wings and sprawling them out across the site, we've kept them real compact and as possible. Something interesting as you're walking through the building today, those classroom wings we're planning, the corridor lengths are actually shorter than what we have here at Mahoney and Memorial. So each of those wings are going to be really nice environments that actually be smaller in scale than the length of the building here. Electrical vehicle charging station, that's something that's a local expense right now. We're actually looking for grant funding through Efficiency Maine to take that out to local dollars and shift that over to a grant funding side. And then, of course, all of this is going together to enhance the middle school education. Another key piece is the Citywide Climate Action and Adaptation Plan that's being implemented. There are 4 pieces with that I think are key, and their website is actually pretty good, some more information about this program. But four objectives we're sharing, I'll just read those off, but energy and high performance buildings, something we're working on with this building. Transportation and land use, definitely something that's a key piece of what we're doing. Waste reduction and climate preparedness. And really what they're trying to get to is the fossil fuel free and clean energy removal to get that reduction down piece. So, and that fossil fuel reduction is a key part and ties in really nicely to the geothermal system we're using. The goal being with the solar panels, being able to use that for the energy for the geothermal system. Really won't have any, we won't have any fuel oils in the project. We'll have natural gas in place for the generator and for our boiler backup. So that'll be an extreme situation. So in general, be able to help towards that fossil fuel free target. So just to go over these locally funded elements again. So there's academic community spaces. Those are the split areas where we're talking about where the corridors widened up, increased music classroom space, increased multi-purpose room space, increased gymnasium size, the district office and the parking. The geothermal system, again, that's a split cost with the state. The irrigation piece, which I didn't mention again, the irrigation at the fields, what we're looking to do is to
So I think we'll go ahead and get started. Is that okay? Okay. Welcome to our middle school information night. This is the first of 2 information nights we're having on our middle school project and the concept design for the project. Over the course of the evening, you're going to hear about the work that's led up to this point, the work that's going into the concept, and get a chance to see and tour a bit around the concept design for the new middle school for South Portland. And in the end, we'll be gearing towards a straw poll next Thursday night on June 20th at South Portland High School to give the community's sense of what the community feels about our middle school design and the project. And that then goes up to the State Board of Education for their review and hopefully possible approval, and then on to referendum in November. Going back about a year, we had a similar process. We had 2 information nights on our site, and we had a site straw poll, and at that point we gave a sense to the state that the community was in favor of the site that was chosen, where we are right here on Westcott Road. And then the state board in July of 2018 gave us approval to continue our work and develop the concept. So we're at that next big step. A lot of great work has gone into this. We have members of our committee who've been working tirelessly for many years. Certainly there have been numerous meetings since I came on as superintendent in 2015, but I know it even predated that. You'll learn a little bit more about that tonight. This is also being recorded for SPC TV, and so we're really thankful to have the whole SPC TV crew here tonight. And we understand South Portland School Department is trending on SPC TV, so while we have a small crowd here this evening, we know that many, many people beyond this will be able to see this presentation And we encourage you, if you have questions when you see this presentation, please email me, Ken Cunin. You can find my email on the website, or Kathy Germani, Assistant Superintendent, and we will really try to answer all of your questions as it pertains to the middle school project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Germani.
So as the superintendent said, we actually have been working on this project for quite some time. And we'd like to give you a little bit of background information on that to start. We actually are calling this an opportunity for our future. And over the course of the last 4 years, we have had a number of people involved in creating this project. It's not just been school people, and we really want to thank the members of the community and our students in our schools and our staff and the people who've served on the building committee for all of the hard work that they've done. Over the course of our work, we've met with countless people in community forums, we've met in building committee meetings, we've gone to places like the planning board, to the Maine DOT, we've been to the state a number of times to talk about the project and our vision for going forward. We've actually had 43 building committee meetings over the course of the 4 years that we've been working. We've had 3 community forums where we've asked people to weigh in on different pieces. Sometimes we've had students at those forums and they've provided some great insight. We're holding 2 public informational meetings. We had a straw poll on the site and we're having another straw poll on the concept next week. We actually have been exploring a middle school project since 2006. At that time, we created several applications to submit to the Department of Education to get on the school funding list. We had not heard anything. The process was on hold. So in 2015, the school board asked us to bring a committee together to begin looking at a project. In 2016, August of that year, the State Board of Education finally called us in and approved our project. So a lot of work has gone into this project as we've moved forward. We have a lot of information to share with you. We think we're moving forward with a project that will be a bonus for this community, that will serve not just middle school students, but our entire community. And so I'd like to let you know that our meetings continue twice a month. We are taking a little bit of a hiatus this summer. We meet on Thursdays, the first and third Thursday of the month, most months. Our next meeting is on August the 1st at 6 p.m. in South Portland High School, room 221. And I'd like to introduce Mike Johanning from WBRC Architects, who's been working with us since 2016.
Hello, thanks for having me here tonight. It's to talk about a number of things with the concept, but one of the first things, just going through some more background, is this state's 21-step flows chart. I don't expect to be able to read this. I do have a copy of this on the board in the back of the room if you want to take a look at it after the meeting. This is on the state's website, of course, and you can see the detail it takes to get through all the processes. One of the key pieces to note here, there are 3 opportunities for the community to vote on this project. So we had that number 1, that was with the site selection straw poll. We've had that meeting last year, and we had approval for the site selection at that point. Number 2, the second vote we'll be coming up to will be for our concept straw poll, and that's the vote we're going to have coming up next week on the 20th. And then the third opportunity will be the November referendum after we get through the state board concept approval. So kind of zooming in on those steps a little bit, I wanted to look at steps 10, 11, 12, and then 13, just to get a little bit more detail of what's happening in those, so you can see those right in the presentation right now. So at step 10, state and local agency reviews and approvals. We're wrapping up some of those pieces right now. Pretty much all that information is in place that satisfies the DOE. We've been going through and reviewing all that information with the Department of Education, getting through those concept conferences. Those are all complete. The state's ready for us. It's given us approval to go ahead to the straw vote number 2 for the concept. That's what we have scheduled for next week. After that site straw poll, that information in July will be going in front of the State Board Construction Subcommittee, beginning of July, and then that'll be followed up by the full State Board of Education, their vote, and in the middle of July. And then once we get through that approval, that concept approval will be going to local referendum in November. These steps in here are all obviously critical to get to that state board approval, so it'll allow us to go out to referendum. After we get the state board's approval, there's a number of steps that need to happen locally to get the balloting in process to get to November referendum. But the key piece in here being getting the site straw poll pinned down and approval there so we can get on to the Department of Education.
So in 2017, our building committee, which was made up of community members, parents, teachers, school board members, central office staff, and architects, made a decision based on the information that we had studied and collected. And that was that our recommendation was for one middle school, 5 to 8, to meet the needs of the students in South Portland High School. As part of the study that we did, we actually looked at all K-8 students in the district to see how everyone could benefit from this project. We looked at a 5-8 configuration because we knew that pre-K was important to the district and we didn't have the space for pre-K. We knew that our special ed needs had increased over the years with students with greater disabilities needing more space and more services. We also have had an increase in our English language learner population. They've provided rich diversity for the system, and we're glad they're here, and we're glad that they're part of our district. But at the same time, we lack space at our elementary schools. Even though the district had rebuilt all 5 elementary schools and done a fabulous job, we were finding that we were using spaces that were not designated for classroom spaces. So we knew if we went to a 5-8 configuration, it would free up some space for us to be able to continue to move forward in our elementary schools, providing the services that we think are important for all students. And so we came to the decision as a committee that we would move forward with a 5-8 middle school.
Right, so kind of following up on that background information, then we've been working a lot on our concept iterations. So, as you can see, there's been over 40 concept design iterations that we've been working our way through and reviewing with the state, reviewing with all the local authorities, reviewing with the building committee, just to go over, making sure we got our concept in line and we're meeting the goals for the project. So here's the concept elevation that we have for the project. This is a view of what will be the main entrance to the new school. Two classroom wings, a 5-6 classroom wing, and a 7-8 classroom wing. The idea being try to get this 2 schools in one feeling for the building. So come into the building and then you kind of have an opportunity to go to either wing in the facility. We want to build on the tradition that you kind of have in South Portland. We want a traditional style building, something with some permanence to it. We didn't want something that was going to be too modern or something that might get out of date after a little bit of time. Something that has a permanence to it and that looks appropriate for the city. Some key pieces to look at. We're looking at for a lot of masonry. Again, coming back to that durable piece. We want some durable materials on the building, so looking for a masonry facade. Supervision and security being another key element that you can see in this elevation. So from this main entrance, you'd be this main office area. From this main office area, you can really have great supervision over the entire site. And I'll get you a little bit more of that when I look at the site floor plans. So here's our site concept plan. A couple of things to just kind of orient you a little bit. So here's Skillen over here. The existing school sits right here. We're in the library right there, right now. So the new school building, looking at phasing and be able to keep the site operational so school can be happening while this new building is being built. We're going to we shifted the school back to the south side of the site. So obviously the school can remain operational while the new building is being built. Key things to note here, the bus drop-off loop will be coming in on this side. This will be the parent drop-off loop with some short-term parking. Primary access drive for the primary parking lot for staff, down this side and down through here. Main entrance to the building will be right here through this centerpiece. So you have a classroom wing and a classroom wing. And then district office will be located on the lower level in the back of this wing through over here. And that, of course, giving opportunity for a separate dedicated main entrance for the district office. A couple things, other things to note on here, what's these areas that are circled in red. Those are some areas where there's going to be some local dollars involved. So we're looking at some additional parking for Skillen. What we want to do is there's a kind of a parking deficiency over there, and really we reorient the parking a little bit. So improve the parking over at Skillen. The geothermal field will be located underneath the playing fields here. All the wellheads for the geothermal system will be located under those fields. You'll actually not even know it's there once the fields are all in place. That cost is actually a 50-50 split with the state. And then what's circled around right here is the additional parking required for district office. The state's not going to fund that parking for the district office. So some massing views of the building, kind of giving an idea of how this is going to sit on the site in relationship to where we are now again. So kind of playing with Google Earth and pulling some images in there. You can see the existing building right through here. Here's the planned building. So again, classroom wing, classroom wing. What's in the blue would be the gymnasium, multi-purpose room, and then the district office would actually be tucking in down below here. Here's a view from the Skillen parking lot of that looking back. So to give you kind of reference, here's the corner of Skillen. Actually do a rainwater collection system for the building. So we'll actually capture the rainwater on the roofs, bring that inside the building for storage, and then when we need it for the field irrigation, be able to send it out to the fields for irrigation, which I think is a pretty cool system to have in place. Solar power, which I mentioned, and then increasing the generator size just to be able to run more systems should there be a power outage. The other piece is then the playground at Skillen and the Skillen parking improvements, which I pointed out. The other items that are going to need to happen are the replacement of the school facility shop, the maintenance shop, and central receiving. Those are aspects of the current middle school at Memorial and the south wing that will need to be relocated. And then additional traffic mitigation as needed beyond the state involvement. We have a little bit more about traffic coming up.
So one of the things that we had quite a number of discussions around was that whole central office piece. Currently, central office is attached to Memorial Middle School. Unfortunately, the state won't fund that cost. We looked at other projects and tried to convince them that that was the thing to do, and they said no. So we actually did go out and look at the difference between building or leasing space. And currently, there are a number of places in South Portland that have vacant Class B office space. But we looked at the size that we needed, and we projected out what that cost would be 4 years from now. And so it averages out to about $19 per square foot, and includes the rent, utilities, property insurance, property tax, common maintenance, and we estimated an escalation cost of about 2% per year. And then we looked at what it would cost for us to include the district office on that base level at the new middle school. And this chart right here, the blue is a lease cost over a number of years, and the red is a build cost. So you can see that it really makes sense for us to include this in the project. Although there is that cost up front, over the long term, it will save the district money. We also talked about where space was available. Most of the space that is available for lease in South Portland is over at the mall or beyond. We truly believe that proximity to schools is really important. Oftentimes something will happen. Ken and I need to get to a school in a short period of time. We really feel like having to fight traffic to get across town or into a school building would not be best for our kids. This is actually a graph of the state funding versus the district funding. I have to point out that this is the first time ever, South Portland is getting a state-funded project. All of the other construction projects that have been done in South Portland have been because taxpayers have approved that through a referendum project, and it has come out of the tax base. You can see that the state funding for this project right now sets at close to $60 million, with $10 million local share for those additional pieces, as Mike said, geothermal, additional parking, the district office, replacing central receiving and the maintenance shop, which will come down when we have to deconstruct the current building. We talked about the size of the building, the number of kids, and the committee is really clear. We want 2 small schools within a school. We want a 5-6 school, and we want a 7-8 school with a principal for each side of the building. We want the building to feel small, even though it looks big. As Mike said, we've pulled the footprint in so that it is much smaller, and we want it to have that feel of a smaller community space. So our design all is built on that premise. We've looked at different start times. A start time for 5-6, a start time for 7-8. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that makes sense, but also so that somebody can greet 5th and 6th graders when they come in, and then 7th and 8th graders come at a different time, and somebody is there to greet them as well. We know that there needs to be at least 45 minutes between those in terms of transportation. So we think right now that a start time for 7-8 would be around the time that the high school starts, and for 5-6 would be around the time that the elementary school starts. We have been looking at our busing routes right now, just anticipation of a lot of different needs, and know that we will have to continue to look at busing routes. We're currently doing counts on buses, how many kids in the morning, how many kids in the afternoon, which neighborhoods do they draw from, and we'll continue to do that as we move along. We have looked at how many drivers we have, and we know we'll be adding some additional drivers over the next few years. Beyond that, we think we'll need at least two additional drivers in buses when the building actually opens to be able to support transportation for kids across the city. So one of the things that has been in the forefront all along is traffic. There has actually been a traffic study going on for over a year. We've been working with a traffic engineer. As late as probably a week and a half ago, there were people sitting at the corner of Broadway and Westbrook Street doing pedestrian counts, actual hand pedestrian counts during peak times so that they could check and see. In working with the traffic people, Diane Morabito, who has a great reputation, she actually has done some work with the current city manager in South Portland, so he's well aware of her work. They were pretty clear that to make all of this work and to help mitigate traffic, that we do need those staggered start times, which is great because it helps with our concept of 2 schools and that individuality. There are some things going on in the city at the same time around traffic studies, and they continue to look at those pieces. They're talking about the timing of lights across the city. They're talking about pedestrian walkways. There is a bike pedestrian committee that is looking at a multi-use path from the Red Bank Brick Hill area up to the memorial site as it is. And that will also be on the referendum, not as part of our project, but as a separate referendum question. They're also looking at additional traffic patterns around the city. They know that there are issues, not just at Cash Corner, but down here at Ocean, across the city. And so the city continues to look at those things. But the traffic study that we've been part of has said those staggered start times will help mitigate any concerns that people have about this project being on one side of the city. Maine DOT has been actively involved in all of these conversations. There have been pre-scoping meetings. The planning office has been involved in that. The Maine DOT will be hosting an open community forum for people to talk about any traffic in the city and what the concerns are.
So one of the questions, there's the 2 sides of the budget, and we saw that large pie graph, about $59 million that's funded by the state, and the $10 million funded by local taxpayers. The state portion, the city bonds everything, and then the state pays back their portion over time as part of our subsidy. So that $59 million would be paid out over 20 years as part of the subsidy we receive from the state. But then we'd have the $10 million that we would bond, and so we wanted to give an idea of what the impact is on local taxes of that additional borrowing. And so the graph here shows 22 years, so it's a 20-year bond, because the first 2 years is interest only. And that's where you see that little blue line jump up just a little bit. And so beyond the debt service we carry right now in our budget, which is over $4 million. It's about $71,000 the first year in addition, and about $82,000 in the second year in addition. And then after that, when we're paying principal and interest, we've delayed it because we're retiring a fair amount of debt at that point, and we continue to retire debt over the course of years. When you get to year 14 and you see things really drop off, those of you who've lived in South Portland for a while and remember the high school project, that's when the high school project is paid off. Okay. So you can see that even with the addition of $10 million, which would pay for all the local pieces of the project and some funding to relocate central receiving facilities and to assist the transportation garage in getting fixed up, which is badly in need of work. Even with that, after those first 2 years with very modest increases, we continue to go down in terms of the amount of money that's needed for debt service. Now, I know that by the time we get to 2034, that I probably will not be here, Catherine probably won't be here, but there will be needs. But it's good to see that there will be some capacity at that point to start taking care of those needs, that we haven't mortgaged our future by keeping our debt load very high when other needs are occurring. But we'll have a brand new, still fairly new high school, a brand new middle school, and elementary schools with some of the pressure, relieved from them. We have sort of the numbers behind all of this, which once we get everything set up, we'll also have that on our website. And a lot of this information is already on our website, and we're adding more to it each day. So it's still me. So the timeline, we've talked about, these next steps. The project straw poll, June 20th. It's at 6:30 at the high school in the auditorium. It'll be a similar presentation to this, and a short question and answer period, and then at 7:15 we'll vote. And the way the voting works is we ask that very simple question: are you in favor of this concept for a middle school in South Portland? If so, please stand up. We have people who count and double count. Sit down. If you're not in favor, please stand up. And it's really to give the State Board of Education a sense of the community. The true vote then happens in November if our concept approval submission is accepted by the state and they give us the green light to move ahead, excuse me, with a referendum which would occur on November 5th, and then on November 6th, Ellie would be really, really happy and celebrating, or figuring out what else we can do to move forward. This really is our one shot at the state funding. Once the state board approves the project, which will happen if all goes well on July 12th, we have 6 months from that day to hold a successful referendum on the project. And if we don't do it within the 6 months, then the project goes away and we start over. Which means starting over with an application, and if you recall from Mr. Money, we applied first in 2010, and here we are in 2019. It's going to be a long time until we're near the top of any list. But with a successful referendum vote, then we get into high gear to do construction documents and really continue to work with our community on the building and really getting into making those final decisions on really where will some rooms be. Some things can still be in flux because it's a concept, but we'll continue to work on that and then go out to bid and construction start in 2021, and hopefully September 2023 we'll be welcoming our first class into a yet-to-be-named South Portland Middle School project, and there'll be a public process for that with the board by board policy making the final decision. Okay, so we really look forward to seeing folks on the June 20th, and hope for your support and thank you. But we have some time for questions if folks have any questions about the project.
Mike, can you go back to the aerial view of the staff parking and the central office parking in those like what, 7
The
slides?
site. The site plan. No, next one is Jack.
Okay, so this parking lot right here, right in the front of the front entrance, how many parking spots is that?
Fantastic in here. So,
One of the things that's come up often in the presentations that we've done is what about traffic? Everybody's driven from end to end of South Portland, and we know it's an issue. And so we've been working closely with Diane Morabito from Main Traffic Resources, and Diane has looked at start times, end times. They've done traffic analysis at different times during the year. 2 weeks ago, they were sitting down on the corner of Broadway and Westbrook Street doing pedestrian counts in the morning and again in the afternoon. What she found was a staggered start time will significantly reduce the number of trips back and forth and help moving forward. She's also recommended some state-funded improvements to some of the traffic corners, while at the same time, the city has done their own traffic study and has some things planned to make changes around the city, specifically Cash Corner, back across the Broadway corridor. The city is also looking at a pedestrian walkway going from the Brick Hill Red Bank area up to this site. They've been working on that with the Bike and Pedestrian Committee. We've been in constant contact with them to see what they're doing and how we can assist and how it fits into our project. And we've met numerous times with the DOT, where they have talked about traffic, what their requirements for traffic are. We've done some traffic scoping meetings, and they're planning on having a community meeting, not just for this project, but for across the city, to take citizen comments and suggestions around the way traffic patterns move across the city.
Question?
What we'd like to do is just finish, we have just a few more minutes. I think we're just 3 slides, and then we'll open up for questions and answers. So as Kathy had indicated, we're looking at about $59.6 million investment of state funds into South Portland for this project, which is very exciting. Those of you who lived through the high school project know what the impact on the taxes were when the South Portland residents needed to support that entire project. It was significant, it was well worth it, it will serve us well in the future, but it was quite difficult. And so we're looking at the $59.6 million coming from the state and $10 million coming from a local issued bond. And that would pay for the local pieces in the project that Mike had reviewed earlier, and also help us to relocate central receiving and facilities and make some improvements to our transportation and bus depot out on Highland Avenue, which any of you who've been out there at the old water resources area know is in really desperate need. But the question is, what's the impact over time of that on our taxes? And so the chart in front of you shows the impact from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 42. It's a long time, 22 full years of debt service. The reason we've chosen 22 years is not a random number. This has the first 2 years as us on the middle school project of paying interest only. And so that's these 2 years here where you see we go up just a little bit. That's about $71,000 in additional debt service as a result of bonding $10 million. And I think it's about $82,500 the second year. After that, because of debt that we're retiring from the elementary school projects and other middle school projects going back to a ways, it continues to drop off. And then you get to right here, which is 2034, if I'm not mistaken. And those of you who lived through the high school project know what happens right there. We've paid off the high school project, and our debt really goes down significantly. Now we know, to be fair, that who's ever standing here in 2034 will recognize other capital needs in the district. So it's not as if we're going to say in 2034 there's going to be no capital spending, no debt needed for South Portland schools. But we're saying there'll be room. because even with the 10 million, other than the 2 years of interest-only payments, it continues to go down over the next 22 years. So it's 2 years of interest-only payments, and then the bond is paid out over 20 years. In November, when we hopefully get to referendum, there'll be one question on the ballot, which will be for the state funding and local funding combined, because the city bonds that entire amount. And we think all the components of the project, are pretty important and do all hang together. But the state, if they give us the approvals, will reimburse us the principal and interest for the state funding pieces each year as we go through for those next 20 years, starting in fiscal year 23 until we retire the debt, or whoever is here at that point retires the debt in fiscal year 42. So that's, I think, an attractive picture of where we're looking at. We're making an investment, but we're doing it at a time when we think that we can afford that as a city to make that investment in our future. And so I'm on the project timeline as well. And so the next steps are another information meeting tomorrow night. Also going on to the website at any point, and you'll see that this presentation is already up on our website. It actually works pretty well on a smartphone. So that's good. You can have this with you anytime and tell your friends about it. They'll also be able to see this presentation on SPC TV. I'm sure that will be seen by lots of folks, and we'll be able to get the analytics to find out exactly how many folks saw it. And that will all lead to next Thursday night, June 20th at 6:30. We're going to do a similar presentation, and then at 7:50, and a short question and answer period, and then at 7:15 we will have the concept straw poll. The way that works is it'll be a very simple question. Do you approve of this concept plan? If yes, stand up. We have counters who count and double check. If not, please stand up. And then that becomes part of our concept submission to the state as one of the concept submissions about that thing. But it becomes one important piece when the State Board of Education, and really what they want is an indication that if it goes to referendum, it will pass. That's really what they're looking for. They don't want to put their significant dollars, almost $60 million, behind a project that's going to fail at referendum locally. If that passes November 5th, 2019, I will celebrate. But then we're going to get going to get construction documents ready, and a lot of work in that. And then get out there and bidding at a good time of the year, we believe. And then in 2021, construction starts. And in 2023, hopefully at the start of the school year in September, we move into a beautiful new building, then take this building down and complete the site work. So we really look forward to seeing people on June 20th. You can come again tomorrow night if you'd like, but it will be the same exact presentation. And thank you, and now we'll open it up for any questions. And people can ask questions from where they are, as long as you just speak clearly, because they'll capture the question for the viewing audience. Yes?
Yes, I have a question about busing. I was wondering, I can say at the corner I'm presently at with my daughter in the morning, actually 3 school buses come by going to different schools, and I can't see how dividing the busing up would lower costs, like having the buses do another round around the city for like 5th and 6th, and then another round for 7th and 8th.
Yeah, we are looking at the staggered start in this school, right? So 45 minutes. The middle school will start closer to where the high school starts. The 7-8 will start closer to where the high school starts. The 5-6 will start closer to where the K-4 starts. And those may be combined runs. And that's really what we're looking at, is a combined K-6 run. And we really, our current analysis of our buses is we do have some capacity on our current buses. We really just need to relook at our routes. But with that, we are anticipating that we might need, just for this project, 2 additional drivers, 2 additional buses beyond the additions we know we're going to need to add in the next few years. Our special needs transportation has gone up quite a large amount, and our transportation for homeless students, which we're federally required to do.
Okay, so there'd be one bus that would go to 2 different schools?
Well, yes, there would be one bus that might be dropping students at the high school and then coming here and dropping students at the middle school. There might be a bus that's dropping some students at Skillen and then dropping students here. So we'll stagger the time just a little bit to allow for that. But the big thing is really to have the new middle school staggered so that right now we have about 400 students at Memorial Middle School, and they all come at the same time. And so it will really mirror that. We'll have 400 kids in grade 5, 6, and they'll all come at one time. 400 kids in 7, 8, and they'll all come at one time. Will there be an impact? Certainly there'll be some impact. But that's what the traffic impact study was, to look at how big of an impact. Before we staggered the start times, they said the impact was quite significant. And it was sort of an odd impact where it wasn't enough to trigger signals at various places, because there are rules for that at the state level, but enough to create misery for people driving on Broadway. And so we felt the staggered start fit into what we wanted anyway, was to really have these schools feel smaller. But I think busing is something we're still going to be looking at and have some work to do. One thought is, I don't know if you've seen, some of our buses are the regular buses that are 72-seaters, and we have a few that are transit buses that will seat up to 88. And we've got a number of runs where we have, 70, 80 kids in a fairly tight area. Transit buses would be a very efficient way to get those kids back and forth and not need as many buses.
And how long would the bus ride be?
We've done some timing of that. We had one of the associates at WVRC, who also is a South Portland High School, Brown School, and Mahoney Middle School alum, do a number of drives at various times. And we're finding the maximum would probably be in that 30 to 35 minute range, even with a couple of stops along the way. So we're anticipating that would be the longest bus ride from the farthest area, by Willard Beach, over to here. Unless, you have the big traffic tie-ups. The biggest traffic tie-ups on Broadway are more in that 5:30 to 6 range, we found. Although Evans Street coming from the high school, at the time the high school starts, can get pretty backed up. And the city is looking at some changes along that corridor and going to smart lights to try to move traffic along better, which, if you've been on Forest Avenue in Portland recently, they've done those smart light technology between Morrell's Corner and Woodford, and they're extending it down to 295, and that's made some improvement in that corridor. But there are a number of things. In addition to what we're bonding, we're recommending to bond for the school project, the city is looking at some additional bonding also possibly in November for more pedestrian and traffic improvements along the corridor and from Brick Hill Red Bank down here, so in both areas. But that would be a separate bond managed by the city and Department of Public Works. So long answer, a lot of information, a lot going on. Other questions? Yes?
Is there a fairly simple way of explaining?
This one here?
Yeah,
Right.
that parking lot right there.
Yeah, so we're
Oh, that's actual?
you're 24, 25, at least spots in there.
So, in any school event, we're only looking at 25 parking spots for
No,
each.
the whole-
yeah, so-
Well, I know, but
After
that's a
hours.
staff, I'm just saying.
It's open.
Well, I understand, but
Yeah.
I'm saying if it's a school event
Mhm.
during a school day, those are taken.
Hopefully we have some capacity. There are a couple places we put extra parking. One, up on top of where the tennis courts were, now the basketball court, that's some
Okay.
extra parking. The parking in the center area, and then we also asked the state to add parking along the access road.
Okay.
Which at first, we didn't think they were gonna support, and we thought we'd be coming to you and saying that's a local cost. But they agreed, you know, we
And
do
then,
that.
right, and then.
So we have
for-
at least 100 parking spots besides.
Oh, yeah, and
employees.
then keep
Oh,
in
yeah.
mind too that for, if it is event parking after hours, you could have pump parking at the perimeter of the bus loop. And there's also, so there's parking that's built into the perimeter of this drop-off loop here as well. So there, these spaces aren't striped for that, but I'm sure at an event after hours, that would all be free parking, open up as well.
Could always use more parking.
Yeah.
But we think we were able to convince the state to give us
Yeah,
you know,
I
a
was,
reasonable amount.
right, I was very surprised the state was gonna fund this parking right here. I thought that was gonna be local expense.
When we gave them a staff count, we gave them a staff count of everybody who works in the building, no matter what time they work in the building. So all the custodians counted in the count. So we don't think that we'll be using absolutely every space the way we do now at Memorial, where during the school day, every staff space is used.
Right. Keep in mind, just for perspective, so here's the current Memorial lot. So that's about, you know, a third of this lot down through here.
Right.
So to give you an idea of comparison, the parking that's there now versus proposed.
Well, you got the two lots, you know. I'm just saying, you got half the kids. I was just saying, if you're looking at, we're adding a grade, so, I mean, I would think minimum of 150 extra parking spots, that's all I was.
Yeah, no, we did, made sure we got as many spots as we could for the building. It was definitely something we were considering.
I was curious about what is the logic of putting the access road all the way over right next to the residential area as opposed to closer to the other driveways?
Yeah. Two pieces going on with there. The one piece has to do with the construction phasing. So the thought being with the construction phasing is while, because what we want to do is the existing building staying in place while this is being built out. And that gives us an opportunity for this to be a temporary construction access drive, so the fields can remain usable by the students, and this become a temporary construction drive that then they can actually then transition over to the permanent access drive. So that was one piece for the construction phase. The other side of it has to do a little bit with the grades. So the two loops are kind of up at the upper level, and there's actually a hill, it starts to slope off down through here again. So we didn't want to tuck that drive up against the side of that hill. It's easier to kind of move it over to this end and then capture all of the green space here. The other really nice thing that does too is that then once you're in the school building and you're going out for recess or for movement time or getting over the fields, then you're not crossing a drive. If that access drive came down through here and into the parking, then students would have to be crossing over that access drive. So this way then, they can go directly from the school building out to the field without even having to cross a vehicle drive.
So where it is now, it's on top of the next big land drop, which is
Right. So
at
then
the edge of that property?
that other hill starts to form right there, correct?
Okay,
And
so
then
it's
slope
sort
down.
of inside where the fence is?
Right, so we'd be looking at some new fencing through this area. There'd be, I'm calling kind of a runner fence, so a ball stopping fence through here, a sidewalk, and then you have parking and then the access drive.
Any kind of landscaping for the neighborhood?
Right,
I'm
so,
thinking sound of construction.
yeah.
Early to landscaping, I know, but.
Yeah, the final landscaping piece hasn't been worked out. When we get into the planning board pieces, then we'll get into specific things that they're gonna require for any kind of buffering. We'll come through the planning board.
Thank you.
There'll also be a time for the public to come to those planning board meetings and to advocate for, we want to require some landscaping in there. And we would love to see more landscaping. The state won't support much landscaping, but that would be some local expense that we'd be really interested in. The one thing we're really careful about with landscaping is to make sure we have good site visibility. So on the edge of the property, I think it's great, but we don't want to create hiding spots right around the school. So that's something we really think about, just in general.
Right.
Questions or comments, ideas? Future student back there, maybe? Hopefully. That's great. So someday you'll be able to tell them they were there at the start.
So your basic concept for the energy of the building will be insulated enough that the geothermal will handle most of the load except maybe a few January nights.
Right, so the thought being, yeah, we'd be able to, the geothermal system, and actually we had a test well done out there, we got some very good thermal data back from that test well. But the idea being that it'll be able to handle the warmer months and then also except the colder months, except for we have those really, really cold winter days, and at that point we have a backup gas boiler that can help with that.
And, you know, Mike talked about, you know, those first few days at the beginning of the school year and the days at the end of the school year, and that's when the air conditioning is helpful. It's actually going to be year-round. We have 300 students in classes throughout the summer for various programs, special needs programs, recreation programs, Title I programs, English language learner programs, and we want to use the facility year-round, whether it's school use or community use. And it really just makes it more usable 12 months of the year if we've got a facility that's fully cooled. And we don't believe that we can afford to fully cool it without geothermal. The energy cost that we'd be handing to future generations would not be welcomed, I think. But with geothermal, I think it really can work. Right now, the cost of the photovoltaics is included in the project budget. If we're going to do it, it has to be in the budget. But we're going to continue to explore, are there public-private partnerships that make more sense in terms of, you know, power purchase agreements. And that's something the city has done with revision out at the landfill. And there's been some very positive legislation that's gone through this session that should help encourage that kind of development. And so with that new legislation, it may actually make more sense for us to look at power purchase agreements. And so that's the kind of work that will continue going on in the next phase. We really wanted it designed into the building, both for the roof being able to handle that load, but then also the cost of panels included, if in fact we needed to just purchase outright.
Does this involve at all what they're going to do with
So, as long as a school is educationally useful, and that's the state term, not mine, it's under the control of the school board. Once we are no longer using it as a school property, then it gets turned back over to the city, and the city has to decide what to do with it. My understanding is that the city council would be very interested in having, as soon as they know that they're going to be getting possession in a few years, starting a public process to get input from the community about what's the best use for this space. I think the building's going to be here for a long time. I think the look of the building will be here for a long time. What it's going to be used for, I don't know.
I just want to make sure I understood, because I didn't understand the question. Was that in relation to the
This
existing
building.
middle schools?
It's into this building. Memorial, we know what's going to happen. It's going to be gone. The only thing that's in question now about Memorial that we're hanging on to is to get the final report back from environmental engineers about what do we have to abate as we're deconstructing the building. We've gotten great news from the state today that if there are things found that really increase the demolition cost significantly because of asbestos or PCBs, PCBs being the most significant one that we may not know about. We know about the asbestos. Then that's a state cost. And so that was great to hear, because that could be very expensive. And we don't know whether it's in the building or not, though our suspicion is that in some of the caulking that it is there because it was built at the right time for that. Yep.
Can you talk a little more about the traffic study beyond the hope that staggering start times 45 minutes would mitigate?
Yeah, so what Diane Morvio did was look at the traffic data from the counts that she's done and other information, and really felt that with the staggering of starts, looking at it, well, we're starting a school that's about the size of Memorial right now, which has about 400 students, and then waiting for another peak to start another school that's about the same time. So her feeling was, and when we have her final report, that becomes part of the application for the traffic movement permit. That traffic movement permit is a public document, and we can send you all the data, from that. So you can look at the counts and look at what she thought. She really felt, or her analysis with her team felt, that the only significant interchange that was going to be problematic was Westbrook and Broadway, which right now is a high crash zone. And she is recommending some changes at that intersection to try to mitigate that. We thought that there need to be a longer holding lane on Broadway as you come up to Westcott, and she felt, well, that would be advantageous if we could. It probably wasn't as critical. She did feel the Westbrook and Broadway one was more critical. There were a number of pedestrian changes that she felt were really important. Now, I know the city then is working on traffic beyond the scope of the project. So when they talk about scoping, it's to say, where are we looking? Because we can't look at the whole city, so they looked at it from like that Broadway, Westbrook, really to Cash Corner. The city's looking beyond that and looking at a number of different projects that are in the works to try to improve the traffic flow, on Broadway, from Knightville all the way across. One of the things they're looking at is installing smart lights, which are respond to what the traffic is happening and continue to retime lights based on what's actually happening on the ground. That was done on Forest Avenue in Portland, and if you've been down there recently, it's a bit better between Morrill Corner and Woodford since they've done that. So that might help some. But when, if it's something you're really interested in, I think we should have the final report in a week.
I would hope so.
But email me, I'm happy to send the data once we've got it.
Just curious about driving across Broadway.
I think all of us would still love to see a cross-town road built. I think that might be in Southport's future, but
Yeah.
But in addition, is the city's looking at the Broadway improvements for the entire stretch of Broadway as a separate item
Yep.
from the middle school?
Yep.
There's things like connected, like the suggestions that are being made by the lady that you had being like taken into consideration by the city so that things are being done together. Is that-
Yes, yeah. And Sebago Technics, who also has done a lot of work for the city, has looked at a number of things. They looked at the multi-use path from Red Bank Brick Hill down in, but they've also looked along the Broadway corridor all the way down towards the Armory to look at both pedestrian improvements and trying to do some things to improve traffic flow. One of the DOT, Department of Transportation, there's a program called Safe Routes to Schools, and so we're trying to leverage whatever money, or the city will be trying to leverage whatever money they can to make improvements and really looking along that, that Broadway corridor for that. One thing that would really help traffic when we build this building, though, is to have students take the school bus. The more students on a school bus, the fewer cars that will be, on Broadway. And so that's an education piece that I think we're going to have to, work with the community on, because people like their cars. A lot going on.
I like letting the kid out of the house after breakfast and not worried about it. Why would I want to drive him across town? I'll be on me.
On that note, though, is there good bicycle parking and stuff for kids who, like,
Yeah.
walker kids who might prefer to ride their bikes and
Yeah, that will be built,
Yeah,
bike racks will be built into the project.
Yeah, there could be a number of places for bike racks, but obviously, there's some easy spots right in front of the wing here that would be great spots for bikes. And then on top of that, to take that a step further, for staff, if staff want to ride their bike in the morning, there are showers and stuff that staff could use in the locker room area, separate from the middle school locker room. So if staff wanted to come in and ride their bike, whatever, that opportunity as well.
That reminds me, I looked at it online and I noticed there was room, like a mother room? Are
Yes,
there facilities for nursing mothers?
yes, that's the
That
plan.
is so wonderful.
Yeah, that's something that was brought up early on by the principals, and they made sure we had that space in there.
That's wonderful. I was happy to see that. Well beyond those years, but a lot of teachers are young, you know, so in that stage.
Well, we're happy to hang around if you have any particular questions or things, but really want to thank you all for coming this evening and hope we see you next Thursday night.
How a decision is made between what the state is funding and what became locally funded.
Yes, one slide we didn't include this time has the books of the regulations for the state. The regulations for space, and the regulations for the size of the site and things like that. And so everything that fits within the state regulations, they will pay for in state-approved projects. And so they have a certain space size for a classroom. It's about 800 square feet. All of our classrooms are reasonably within that range, and so they said, you know, we're going to pay for all your classroom spaces. If we had wanted double-sized science labs, then we would have had to pay for a portion of that. For a gymnasium for a middle school, there is a square footage size for the number of students you have, and that's what they will pay for. We wanted something bigger because we could anticipate it really being used by the community, and so we had to pay for that additional space. So that's really what it is. It's any square footage that's above and beyond what is in those state regs. But then there are discussions that go on, and we've been able, we think, to come out fairly well. We think we got the state to cover more music space than they have typically covered in other schools because they saw our music program. We brought all of our schedules and all the signups. You know, so how many kids are taking band? Well, at Mahoney Middle School, there are over 200 kids in band. In Memorial Middle School, there are over 200 kids in band. They said, oh my God, we need a pretty big music space if you're going to have 400 kids. And then the 5th grade music program, which also has about 100 kids in band, you know, you're going to need a lot of space. And so they gave us more space than they typically do because of our, what we call our educational specifications and our, what we've done historically. District offices, they said, was just, you know, they don't touch it. They won't do anything around that because that wasn't related to the project. That's just what we felt was the best decision for the district. And we think it's the most cost-effective one as well. Yep.
I was wondering, like, how the classrooms were laid out. There were like 2 5th grade classrooms on one floor, 2 6th grade, and that was true for both floors. And the same thing with 7th and 8th. Why not just have all the 5th grade on one floor, 6th grade, like have a floor for the kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the most important thing at this point was showing that we had enough room for the 5th and 6th grade all in this wing, and enough room for the 7 and 8 in this wing, and that we had our special education support classrooms close to those areas, and our support programs for English language learners close to those areas. Beyond that, some of those actual designations could change. We'll get into the next phase if we're, maybe I should say when we're successful at referendum, but if we're successful at referendum, then it will be a lot more work with our faculty and staff, getting input from students, getting input from parents, to really come out with our final layout. This is a concept, and so some things will shift.
Okay.
The size of the gym is not going to, the location of the gym probably not going to shift. Whether we have a 5th grade classroom here or a 6th grade there, that's still open.
Okay. I didn't know the intent of putting that on.
Yeah, well, it was trying to create some good multi-grade teaming opportunities that we thought made sense. So there was a lot of thinking, behind it, but it's still going to be something that we're going to continue to look at. Questions for the architect? How does this geothermal thing work anyway?
Well, I think he explained that fairly well. No, my question is about light and natural light coming into especially the lower classrooms and also the administrative area.
Right. Yeah, so you can kind of see it here, but because of how the grades work, they're actually going to be able to get good daylight coming into that lower level. This is, of course, the four-story wing. And the administrative area is kind of the same piece. I mean, it's sunken down, but the grade doesn't kind of go all the way around. It's really, the grade's kind of pulled back. It's just taking advantage of the slope. So we'll be able to get good daylight in three sides of the administrative area, and I'll make sure if they at least have windows down there. I'm sure there was some daylight down there too. But the classroom spaces, in reality, how we're looking at for the design down here, these lower level spaces are actually looking at potentially increasing the size of the windows down there, just to work with some of the architecture. But again, that lower level, driving daylight in there will be something that we keep in mind all through the process.
Yeah, daylighting was something that came up a lot as we, talked in the concept design and how to bring natural light into not just classrooms, but into a variety of spaces throughout the building. And as we get further along, and Mike has more interior views, I think you'll see where they're driving light, down corridors from other sides. And I've seen that in other WBRC buildings where that is really a key feature.
And then kind of the nice thing, I don't have in this view, but when we're looking at solar panels in the south, we're actually looking on the elevations, just not on the roof. But the big thing with daylight is also being able to control that daylight, because you can have great big windows, but if you get daylight coming in, you can't control it. That actually becomes a problem. So we're actually looking at an opportunity to use the solar panels to get into active shading devices in the windows, and then of course we'll make sure we have good shades, perforated shades actually in the classrooms to actually be able to control that light even further.
Questions? Thoughts? Things you wish we would think about? Well, again, I really want to thank you for coming, and though this is not live, thank all the people who do view this over the next week, and encourage you to come out to the concept straw poll. Again, June 20th, next Thursday night, South Portland High School Auditorium. Presentation at 6:30. Question and answer period, and a vote on the concept at 7:15. And with that, thank you very much.